Hey, what's going on YouTube? eGaming Television here, bringing you an updated Season 6 guide on Ezreal, the Prodigal Explorer.
Time for a true display of skill.
Ezreal's a very versatile marksman with multiple build paths. In-game, you can either go for a Trinity Force build if you do need mid-game power spike, or you can go for the blue build if you need to be stronger and kite later game. You have some of the best poke of any of the AD carries in the game, and you have very high burst if used properly. With his E ability, he has a very reliable escape and is very easy to reposition. This makes him a great pick against assassins. Now he can be very rewarding when he is mastered, but the problem is he's very skill shot reliant. This sets him apart from most of the AD carries out there since he's not just a right click auto attack champion. This will take some getting used to. With all of those skill shots, he's got a very high skill cap and he's hard to master. Your early game damage is also relatively weak compared to most AD carries. You're extremely strong in the mid and late game, but it'll take a little bit to get there, of course. You're able to farm very safely in the lane with your Q, but if you do get behind, you're not that incredible of a champion. Last, he looks a lot like a woman, and there's nothing wrong obviously with being a woman, but there is when you're a guy and you look like a woman. For our Masteries, we do what every other AD carry in the game does. We go 18 Ferocity and 12 Cunning, grabbing Fervor of Battle. Now there may be one change you will do depending on if you're going for a Trinity Force or an Iceborne Gauntlet. This would be Oppressor versus Bounty Hunter. If you're going for the blue build, I would go for Oppressor. You're going to have people slowed all day long and you will pretty much always have that 2.5% damage increase. Of course, for the Trinity Force build, you're not going to be having people slowed, so you may as well go for Bounty Hunter, so when you do grab some kills, you'll increase your damage. Other than that, that's absolutely the only thing I would change in these Masteries. Now, if you have a Mastery page for Ezreal specifically and it's always Oppressor, but you realize in the draft, because you picked Ezreal early, you're going to need to go for a Trinity Force, just make sure you change that in your Masteries before you load into the game. For our runes, we go for attack damage reds and quints, and then armor yellows and magic resist blues. We skip the typical attack speed quints as Ezreal since we have multiple ways of getting attack speed from our abilities. If we're using our E to jump into our W, we're gaining that 20% attack speed at level 1, which is already more than the quintessences. We've also got a stacking bonus attack speed on our passive when we are hitting people with our abilities. Since we're able to get a lot of attack speed from both our passive and our W, it is by far better to get the AD quints than the attack speed. Our summoners are of course Flash and Heal. Flash is basically required on 90% of the champions out there because it's so damn strong. It allows you to escape when you're caught in an unfavorable position, or you can use it to go forward and secure a kill. It's great on specifically Ezreal because he has such a long range with his Q that if he flashes forward, he can land a Q from a pretty damn long way away. As for heal, well, it's just the best choice in the bottom lane. It can save you or your lane partner. It's also great to bait people under your tower. Some people will tower dive thinking you're a free kill, only for you to pop a heal and turn it around on them, killing them instead. It also gives a nice speed boost, so you can use it to even chase people or run away. Now we're going to look at each of our abilities, starting with our passive, Rising Spell Force. So as previously mentioned, this is one of Ezreal's ways of getting attack speed from his abilities. So if you hit an enemy or an ally with one of your abilities, you get 10% bonus attack speed for 6 seconds, which stacks up to 5 times. Now of course, as long as you are landing something every 6 seconds, the duration is refreshed. In teamfights, this can equate to 50% bonus attack speed, which is pretty damn solid. Early game, you're not going to get a ton out of this ability though, since you can't have the mana sustain to keep this up. Of course, we do get a mana immune no matter if we're going for the Trinity Force or blue build, so we will get some nice mana regeneration when that item is completed. At this point in the game, it's a lot easier to keep stacks of this ability up and increase your damage by quite a nice chunk. Next up is Ezreal's Q Mystic Shot, and this is your main ability. This is both great for farming from a distance if you're behind, or harassing your opponent. The reason the blue build is so effective on Ezreal is this does apply on-hit effects, which means it applies your Iceborne Gauntlet when it hits an enemy. This will proc that little slow zone, and this allows you to kite enemies all day long. As long as you're actually hitting enemies with this ability, your cooldowns go down by 1.5 seconds, which makes it so important to land. As long as you're reducing your cooldowns, you may be able to get off multiple E's and reposition a couple times in a team fight, making you really hard to bring down. It's got nice base damage and 110% AD ratio, making it an insanely solid ability, so we max it first. Next up, Ezreal's W, Essence Flux. This isn't the best ability in the world since it does scale off of your AP and we go for an AD build, but it does provide some attack speed, making it somewhat decent. So any of your allies you shoot this through gain between 20 and 40% attack speed based on the rank of the ability. Now it also states, if the circumstances permit, Ezreal can boost himself with Essence Flux. How do you do this? Well, it could be as simple as you shooting this ability and then somebody knocking you through your own shot. Another way, well, you could use your E to jump into it, or, if you wanted to for some reason, you could flash into it. Now in teamfights, it can be pretty hard to get this on yourself. Generally, you don't want to waste your E just to get a little bit of attack speed. I usually just find myself buffing my teammates with this ability, but if I am chasing somebody and I have my W off cooldown, then I may as well jump into my own W. Ezreal's last basic ability is his E, Arcane Shift. This is the ability that every AD carry that doesn't have a built-in escape dreams of. A decent sized blink that has a relatively low cooldown and even does damage based on your AD. 50% AD isn't the highest ratio out there, but it still makes a huge difference when you're all-inning somebody. One of my favorite combos is shooting out a W, Eing into it so I get that attack speed, and quickly QRing and bursting the shit out of somebody. If this wasn't enough damage, well, I usually go for the blue build so they'll be slowed and I can easily follow up for a kill. Generally, you'll want to use this ability for an escape, but if you know nobody's around because you have great wards and whatnot, then you will want to use it offensively and try and land a kill when it permits. Keep in mind, at max rank it is 13-second cooldown, but if you are landing your Qs, this goes down by 1.5 seconds each time, so it can be relatively low. And you know, you've also got that fantastic thing called cooldown reduction. Last is his fantastic global ultimate, True Shot Barrage. Very simply, you can use it at a global range and the speed is 2000 and it deals a bunch of AD and AP damage. You have to keep in mind, however, that the damage is reduced for each enemy hit beyond the first, so every enemy may not be taking that full portion of damage. It's obviously great for team fights for doing a nice little AoE chunk of damage, but it's also great for sniping people that are low HP across the map or trying to steal stuff like Dragon. For our ability order, we max our ultimate True Shot Barrage first, and we can take it at 6, 11, and 16. Due to the high damage and great poke this ability provides, we max our Mystic Shot second. Then we move into our escape ability, our E, Arcane Shift. This is a great ability because it deals damage based on our AD, and the cooldown goes down when we level it, making it a more reliable escape. That leaves our W, Essence Flux, last. Now having attack speed is a great thing, but this is not reliable to get on ourself, and it's not a huge amount of attack speed, plus it scales off of our AP. Due to all these reasons, Q and E are by far superior choices, so we have to take W last. So now we're going to look at what Ezreal is a strong pick against. Now although Ezreal isn't a really strong early game champion, he's still a lot better than a lot of the AD carries out there. He's got really strong poke, and he's able to poke the crap out of champions like Vayne and Kog'Maw. They're not going to be able to return a lot of the damage that Ezreal puts out, and he should have a rather easy lane, but of course supports can change this. Champions without any mobility also have a hard time against Ezreal, since they can't dodge his skill shots as easy. This yet again would be Kog'Maw. Kog'Maw hates Ezreal, and stuff like Varus and whatnot as well. Now, as long as you're a blue Ezreal, tanks that don't have gap closers will also really hate fighting Ezreal. This would be champions like Garen or Udyr. Yes, of course they have speed boosts, but as long as Ezreal is constantly slowing with its Iceborne Gauntlet, they're not going to catch him. Not only can he save himself by kiting these champions, but he can also save his teammates as well by providing slows. Last, like we've talked about, Ezreal has a really reliable escape. Even really strong early game ganking junglers can have trouble getting on top of an Ezreal and shutting him down. As long as they've got good map awareness and wards, even champions like Lee Sin or Kha'Zix won't be able to get on top of an Ezreal, usually anyways. Ezreal, however, is rather weak against early game champions with strong engages since he's not able to kite yet. Stuff like Leona and Lucian will be able to get on top of Ezreal with relative ease, and of course outdamage him, since he'll be in a stun. Now, not the end of the world, however, you may not be able to trade as effectively as usual, but you can still farm from a distance with your Q. Healers like Sona and Soraka are also really good against Ezreal, since they can out-sustain your poke. However, if you do pair with another poke support, like say a Karma or a Zyra, you may have way too much poke for them to out-sustain, and you will be pretty damn fine in the lane. Now Ezreal is pretty strong in the late game, but he's certainly not a hyper carry, and stuff like Vayne, Tryndamere, and Master Yi will destroy your anus. Champions like this in the super late game may destroy you even if they have an exhaust. It can be that horrible for Ezreal. Now of course you have a really nice escape in your E, but champions with point and click spells like Syndra or Veigar Ultimate or Pantheon's W are great considering you can't actually dodge them. You of course can E away before they use these abilities, but they may be able to lock you down or nuke you for it not to even matter. So now for the synergies, and remember when I said he was very versatile? Well, it's pretty much because he can work with any support champion out there. So here's why. Support champions with poke work great with him since they take full advantage of the strong poke Ezreal has. They'll be able to poke and poke and poke until the enemy champions either die or have to leave the lane. So these would be champions like Sona, Zyra, or Karma. Support champions that buff your damage are also great with Ezreal since they'll make your poke do insane amounts of damage. Champions like Nami, Janna, and Sona all have ways of buffing the damage you do, making your pokes do a lot more than they usually would. Last would be those great support champions with crowd control. Things like Thresh, Leona, Braum, and Taric are all able to hold people in place, so your skill shots are a hell of a lot easier to land since they can't move. Pretty much Ezreal is always a great pick because it doesn't even matter which support champion somebody picks to play with you. So last up, we've got the item build, and it starts with a Doran's Blade, Health Potion, and Warding Totem. Now right off the bat, we've got two different core builds. We've got the Trinity Force, and we've got the blue build. Now right off the top, I'm going to say my personal preference is the blue build. I like it a hell of a lot more than the Trinity Force, but the Trinity Force is a lot better in the mid game. If you're with a really late game comp, you may want to go for the Trinity Force since your team won't be complete garbage until the late game. So anyways, in both builds, we start with a tier because we will eventually get a mana immune and we want to get that stacking as much as possible in the early game. We then get our first core item, either the Iceborne Gauntlet or the Trinity Force, and then we move into that mana immune after our first main item. Now since the blue build has a little bit more trouble getting cooldown reduction, we take the Ionian Boots for that core build. For the Trinity Force build though, I like to get the Berserker Greaves since I like to get a Black Cleaver in that build for the 40% CDR. So both builds pretty much stay the same, grabbing a Blade of the Ruined King and Mercurial Scimitar in most cases. There of course could be games where you don't really need the Mercurial Scimitar and you may want to get a Bloodthirster instead, but we'll get into that later. In the blue build, I then like to get Lord Dominic's Regards as it works really nice in the late game with that blue build. In the Trinity Force build, however, I really like the Black Cleaver since it has that 20% CDR. It doesn't give as much straight up armor penetration as the LDR, but it does shred them for your teammates as well, making it a really nice item. So all of these alternatives here are pretty good, but I'm only going to touch on a couple of them. First, like I mentioned, is the Bloodthirster. You may not always need the Mercurial Scimitar if there's not a lot of CC, so this may be the one you want to take. Maw is also a great item if you're against a lot of AP. This adds a lot of nice offensive stats, but it's even better for the passive shield it provides when you get low and helps you live through any magic damage. Now Essence Reaver is also okay, but not really at the same time. You need crit in your build to make great use of the Essence Reaver, and with the new Trinity Force, we have literally no crit in our build. Now Mortal Reminder is an item you may pick up every now and again. There seems to be a bunch of champions that really abuse self-healing in the meta right now, stuff like Vladimir and Swain and stuff, and you can really shut them down by reducing their healing. This of course would replace both the LDR and the Black Cleaver. It kinda sucks that you'd have to get rid of the Black Cleaver and lose some CDR, but you'd probably want to do it so you don't get 1v5'd by a Swain. So that pretty much covers it for our updated Ezreal Season 6 guide. For more of our guides, you can go to our website, www.egamingtv.com. If you wish to talk to us, you can also do so on Twitter at egaming_TV. We do all of our monthly skin giveaways on our Twitter as well, and if you're interested in the opportunity to win free skins, make sure you follow us on Twitter and retweet the photo when it comes out. Other than that, thank you guys a lot for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the guide and found it helpful. Let us know what you thought in the comments. And I hope to see you guys in the other guides. Peace.